Let's see. It says I need to do something over here. Oh, there we go. Go live.
I think we're rolling.
I think we're rolling. I wish we had some epic background music right now because I feel like that would be an amazing intro. But since we don't, we're just going to kick this off today and hope that some of our wonderful community follows us. We are live on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. And I wanted to hop on today because it is Giving Tuesday, which is a global day of giving, and bring on our board president, David Ford, to talk about some of the highlights of hope for the past year and kind of reflect as well on this past decade that we've had as an official charitable organization and nonprofit in the world, and give everyone a little bit of the history of Hope for HIE, of advocacy for HIE support, and where we are today. So if you haven't already met David Ford, I'm pleased to introduce our community tuning in to him. And David has been a member of our community for many years, has been on the board on and off for many years, and is an incredible leader. The biggest heart I think I know out there. And I'd love, David, for you to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background of your story and connection to HIE.
Sure. Thank you, Betsy. Morning, everyone, and happy Giving Tuesday. I've been involved with Hope for HIE most of my daughter's life. So she just turned 10 in October. Her name's Scarlett, and we welcomed her in a small community hospital here in our hometown of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. Shortly after she was born, my wife found Hope for HIE via the Facebook groups, and we got involved, and it was a tremendous relief to know that we weren't alone, number one, and that number two, there was a community of people ready and willing to support us and offer advice and listen and all the other wonderful things we did at that time. And I had a background in nonprofit fundraising, so after I was able to sort of get my feet back under me, I reached out to Betsy, who was then the board chair, and offered to volunteer. And in a lot of ways, the rest is history. I've been on the board, like Betsy said, on and off for quite a while. I've been the board chair for a few years now. And I've had a front row seat for what's been nothing short of a tremendous transformation within our organization. We had big aspirations way back when I first got involved. And our goal was to become the global leader in support, research, advocacy, and anything else we could get our fingers into related to HIE. And in many ways, we've checked some of those boxes and made tremendous progress. There's still unimaginable distances to go in so many ways, but I'm happy to say that we went from having no employees in a very, very small budget to now employing a full-time executive director, Betsy, and a team of folks who help support the mission of the organization in a variety of ways. And again, research, family support, many other ways, advocacy. I don't know where you want to start, Betsy, as far as the programs, but I think for me, one of the most exciting things is the peer-to-peer support that we've developed. When a family, in fact, I recently connected with a dad who welcomed a child actually on the same date as my daughter 10 years later. He reached out and had read about our family story in a book we published a couple of years ago called Highlights for Hope. He said he read our story in particular about
Small
20
plug.
times,
Yeah.
about 20 times in the NICU, and felt compelled to reach out. And I'm glad he did, because I was able to lend an ear and offer some support and just tell him to kind of see things through and buckle up, because there's ups and downs and sidewayses and sometimes backwards and all these other twists and turns that you're going to experience. But, we're here for you and happy to support you. But in our peer support program, we have both ongoing matches for new parents and then one-off matches for somebody who needs a temporary ear and maybe some advice or guidance on the early stages of life with a child who's been impacted by HIE. I don't know, how many matches do we have now, Betsy?
I mean, in the past year, since we've launched on a bigger scale, we've had over 300 matches in our peer support mentorship program. And that really is a direct result of investing in using the resources entrusted to us in the people that can make that possible. So we have a social worker. Haley has been with us for a year and a half, and then she is transitioning out of the position, and our new social worker starts in January. In the meantime, I want to highlight Allison Moyes, who has been a steadfast leader in the peer support mentor program. She's a parent. She has a background in social work, and she has been doing an excellent job, facilitating a lot of these support groups, and is working with our peer support mentors in this transition as well, to continue to make sure that our families are supported, they're connected, and through that program, we have over 18 mentors. We are able to provide training for them and continued support to make sure that they have the tools they need to be effective mentors. Our program just continues again to grow rapidly and meeting those needs to make sure that our mentors have what they need to be successful. Our mentees feel that they have that soft place to land and a connection. We did expand, as David said, the programming to our mentors one-to-one, which are like the ongoing up to a year of support with the same mentor. And then we also have the mentorship on demand, we're calling it. So that way, if you just want to talk to someone about a subject, like you just want to talk to another dad at the new, at the onset of your journey, you want to talk to someone who's going through G-tube surgery. You want to talk to someone with more of a mild experience and see what life looks like for them, down the road, and what it might look like for your child. We have, people we try to source and serve across all demographics, ages, outcomes, etc. And that has been really, really important to us. Support has been at the core of who we are. With our founding, Hope for HIE was founded originally by 3 moms who connected on social media. And it was started as a Facebook group with the intent to grow as an organization. And so a group of us got together in 2013 and took that vision from that smaller 200, 300 families connecting of where we could go with this, and really have put the energy into it this past decade with many, many hands and many, many hearts doing so. You look at like the marathons and, it's the year of the Olympics. And so I always, get inspired by the people that run these long distances when I am not a runner myself, and look at, there's something about the passing of the baton and the torch bearing and all of that imagery that is really speaks very, very close to the heart of nonprofit work, to charity work, and that, it takes all of us to come around this. So before Hope for HIE, there was no advocacy, there was no support, there was no education for HIE. Yet HIE is is not a new diagnosis. So when we look at a lot of the past decade, there, I call it kind of the genetic revolution, and everyone hears of like all of these rare genetic diagnoses and things, and a lot of work that goes into the research and the science. And when you look at where HIE is not a new diagnosis. It has been around forever. It's really complicated. There's many different causes. And until, the past 12, 14 years, there was no intervention. So we have currently today one therapeutic intervention, which is cooling. It's helped a lot of babies thrive. It's helped improve outcomes, reduce mortality. So reducing death and disability for our population, but we still remain one therapeutic that's approved and safe currently. But the real exciting thing, I think, when we get into all of these different buckets today is looking at where we are and how we've been able to advocate and really energize our community to influence advocacy and change and research, and looking at how we can best serve our community. So we started early, and really kind of, in many ways, I have felt that this is like playing catch up, because this is not a new diagnosis, but we do what we can, where we can, how we can. So when we start with talking about support, that is the core of who we are. And when we grew as an organization, 2019 was really kind of a moment for us where we started really, really accelerating in growth and in collaborations with in the advocacy world and in the research world. And we had grown to, if you've been around for a while, we've grown to connect about 4,500 families at that point. And then 5 years later, we're now over 10,000. So we've over doubled in that time as well. And we know that tens of thousands of other families should be connected, and we're making progress along the way. So the interesting thing is that we've been able to do this in a relatively short period of time. I think, David, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that, and then we'll get into more of the kind of the buckets of what of what we do, our programs and services, how every family has access to social work, every family has access to child life, every family has access to this peer support, and to our programs like our Super Sibs program and our SOAR program for our teens and tweens, and all these things that we're doing. So David, give us a little bit with your nonprofit background, and you did an amazing presentation back when the board met at the Pediatric Academic Society meeting in the spring, of kind of the life cycle of a nonprofit and where we are in our organizational journey.
Sure. I think Betsy gave a little bit of the background, but we started out purely grassroots via social media. The organization was incorporated and began to establish some formal structures. And as Betsy said, I think 2019 is, again, it was all volunteer driven at that point. We were fortunate to get a very generous gift from a medical device company that you might be familiar with called Medtronic. And we had been talking about transitioning to an employee model and hiring a full-time executive director. We had Betsy in mind for that position because in reality, she had been doing the work of a full-time employee as a volunteer for a number of years, in addition to maintaining a full-time job, being a mom and a wife and all the other important things aside from her professional career. And we took that investment from Medtronic. We took a leap of faith. We hired Betsy, and it was wonderful. We had a chance to sit down with a representative from Medtronic at the retreat that Betsy just referred to last year, or I guess it was earlier this year, and discussed the fact that we had taken that gift and we had leveraged that into tremendous growth. We had sustained Betsy as a full-time employee for over 4 years at that point. We had added a team of, I think, 4 part-time employees at that point. And a lot of that was done through private donations. Once they saw that we were credible and had built a sustainable model, many other donors joined in, and we invite you to do the same. I think our next step is to further expand services. We've seen, the impact we've seen, having been in this world for a decade now, I can say with certainty that children that are born with HIE as a diagnosis or have it in early childhood are fortunate to have a world that's much different than the one my daughter was born into a decade ago. And I'll use the father that I was mentioning before as an example. We were at a NICU. My daughter was transferred from a community hospital to a NICU in Philadelphia, and we really didn't have they were supportive, and she received incredible care there. But we found Hope for HIE ourselves My wife found it by Googling, looking on Facebook. Once we understood that was a diagnosis, the HIE part of it. In turn, the father that reached out to me was given our book in the NICU, received information about our organization almost immediately, and was able to connect with me via Facebook Messenger, as soon as he got that information. So just that connection has been a dramatic transformation. So families getting connected as quickly as possible to credible resources like Hope for HIE, and then we can direct them from there, is a incredible and transformational change in the organization. So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Getting families connected to support is really important, but from there it just snowballs into so many other things. And I always tell parents that you'd be surprised at how much our feedback and input matters when we're in the NICU or we're talking to a doctor. They don't know our experience firsthand. They understand the medical side of it, I think, to a large extent, as well as anyone does. But our firsthand perspective is so important, and I think I always encourage parents to speak up and talk about how the care they receive affects their well-being and their child's well-being and so many other things. But yeah, so I would just say, we've grown tremendously. We couldn't do that without the support of the community and our larger donors. So we're partnering on clinical research with a number of organizations now. Betsy mentioned cooling is the only treatment right now, but we have many more things on the horizon, and we're working closely with companies developing those treatments to make sure that they have a track to full access and approval. To the extent that we can participate in that, we connect them with families who can offer insight, and that's become a valuable resource for them as researchers as well. So it's I think where we go from here is we continue to grow. Again, we've just started to establish. We piloted a hospital ambassador program throughout this year with Seattle Children's, and that's been great. We have Tina, who's a parent that liaises with the hospital. They know if a new family comes in, they can reach out to her to offer support, get them connected and acclimated to Hope for HIE's resources. We're planning to expand that hospital ambassador program. So the needs there, we've identified a variety of needs. The question is, how quickly can we ramp up with the resources we have? And that's where all you have come in. So the more support we receive, the better off we are, and the more we can offer our families. And I as a board and as a leadership team, we see a need and we do everything we can to meet it. We generally start aggressively with a pilot and figure out how to make that work and work out the kinks and get people involved, hire the right people, and we go from there. And that's borne a lot of important advances in the organization and in support for HIE families.
Yeah. So I think as we talk about, this walk down memory lane and then talking about kind of the past, present, and future, because it is our 10-year anniversary. So it's, we have some special things that we're going to be planning throughout the year. We have some fun merch. We have all the good stuff, but we really have done so much over the past decade. And that is, again, such a wonderful combination of efforts between our community, our partners, our leadership, our boards. And I just want to share, because some people tuning in let's start at the beginning, might not know what HIE is, because, you might be following for one reason or another, but HIE stands for hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. And we have a lot of the breakdown on our website. If you go to hopeforhie.org/what-is-HIE, right? Always trying to break down, because these are wildly complex concepts, very complex medical terms. And it's like learning a new language, right? When you get thrown into this. There are many, many things that can cause HIE, both neonatal HIE and pediatric acquired HIE, which is our focus area, and the service that we provide and tailor to. And so from an awareness perspective, every year we hold HIE Awareness Month in April. It's kind of our big to do. And every year it gets a little bit bigger, but it's really been amazing to see. We started that. There was no awareness for HIE or advocacy out in the community, right? And there's never a shortage of work to do to continue that, and that is a an cornerstone of our mission, certainly. To make sure that people are aware of it, of the ways, always working on the dual aims of prevention and then improving quality of life, right? And what that looks like. Because there are so many causes of HIE, it can be really tricky to dig in deeply to many of the preventative areas. But we've been highlighting research this year, which is really exciting. In particular, I think last month. I guess now it's December. So in October, 2 months ago now, we had an incredible maternal fetal medicine researcher who is digging deep into looking at if there is a cohort of babies that may not tolerate labor and are more susceptible to HIE, and if those can be identified in utero, so while the babies are growing, and then looking at how that could lead to better care and decreasing for that population of babies that might fall into that category. There's a ton of research with the Human Placenta Project, lots of placental research going on because placental impact is probably the largest population in our community. And when you look at, there's always the statistics, and for a long time we had to dig for these. And even now, when we look at long-term data, right, we are the keepers of that in Hope for HIE. We have the biggest data set of lived experience in the world. And that's really powerful. And when you participate in things that those surveys that we share, that we're partnering on with researchers, that does move things forward. So from the awareness side, we really encourage you to get involved in HIE Awareness Month in April. There's many different things you can do. You can be a hustle host. Hustle for Hope was actually David's brainchild originally. And if you're not familiar with what Hustle for Hope is, it's our in-person and virtual events during HIE Awareness Month, and sometimes sneaking into May, depending on where you live, if the weather is better in May. But it is a platform to build local community. And it's been absolutely bonkers to see this program grow over the past 4 or 5 years. We originally launched it in April 2020. And if we can all reverse the clock to think about what was going on in April 2020, we originally launched it as a virtual 5K. And that was good because that was when we were all, working through COVID. And it was, I think, it was a great success for the first event, and it has really grown since then. I think we started with 150 registrants, and last year, in 2024, in April, we had over 1,200 registrants, over 12 in-person events. And this is really where the magic sauce is with any community like ours, is those in-person connections. And that's something that we've done, right along the way, from events like meetups and retreats, to advocacy meet and greets. Now this past year in particular, we've started at the many different medical conferences that we participate in and that our medical advisory board participates in, bringing our community together in meaningful ways. This year in particular, the Newborn Brain Society conference in Ireland, we had 9 Irish families, local families, come together and share their experiences. And it was a sold out event with a wait list, which was really impressive to see how many people truly cared about what our families have to say, what it matters most to our families, and what their experiences were, and where things can be worked on to improve. So that's been really exciting to see from the advocacy side. Again, there was no advocacy before Hope for HIE for HIE. And our next project, which I think many of you have seen, is, and many of you know this and experienced this, I've had doctors and researchers reach out to me and email me and say, hey, do you know of any long-term follow-up guidelines for HIE? And I always laugh because I'm like, why are you asking me? Like, I'm not the doctor. I am not a researcher. But they didn't know themselves. So that really highlighted the fact that there is no current guideline for long-term follow-up for HIE. And what we knew about HIE 10 years ago and what we know about it now is very, very different. Obviously, through a lot of the lived experiences of our families, mild HIE was completely left out of the original cooling research. So you have a whole cohort there of babies and kids that were left out. But there are some researchers that have tracked them. And then looking at, what we knew 10, 15 years ago and what we know now as far as MRIs and outcomes and, all the things where MRI, when I think our kids were born and babies, was like the pinnacle. Like MRI day was this it was like the Wizard of Oz, right? And, of like, here's this magical ball. You're going to know so much after this MRI. And for some kids that might be true, but, the research has shown that like MRI is right about 50% of the time for prognosis with outcomes. So it's a piece of the puzzle. And it was, I think for a lot of us, it was told to us that it was the only puzzle that mattered, when our babies were born. And I think now that the education and understanding has gotten so much better, and that's through advocacy, that's through connecting with families and connecting the families to researchers and elevating this lived experience. So one of the things that we also want to talk about of a win this year is that, and you might have seen this, we're going to be building a registry and addressing, this is like long-term goals that we have had since the get-go of filling this data gap for our families and our community. And we got a seed grant of $100,000 this year, which was a big deal with Danielle Barber, who's on our medical advisory board and board of directors. She's a pediatric neurologist. She's an HIE parent. And she is also a researcher with HIE, and she's at Colorado Children's now. She just made the move from CHOP to Colorado Children's. She is the principal investigator on this grant and on this project, along with Dr. Zach Vasulis, who's at St. Louis Children's and Washington University in St. Louis, and a whole crew that we've been working with for 2 years. I can't emphasize enough how and David knows this, how fast I want things to go and how like we're actually moving them pretty quickly in the context of how things move in both advocacy and science and research. And so it might seem like a long time, but it's actually all the pieces are moving concurrently. So they're moving at the same time. And so when we talk about the different things and the wins that we've had and that we're moving forward, it's a big deal that we got that grant, that we're moving this forward, that we're building this registry. We're partnering with the Cerebral Palsy Research Network that has a very established platform. Cerebral palsy, as many of you know, is one of the outcomes for many kids from HIE. About 40% of HIE kids will get diagnosed with some form of cerebral palsy across like anything else, a wide variety of impacts. And so partnering with CPRN has been amazing. And they have over 35 sites from a hospital perspective. That's a dual registry. So you get data in de-identified data. So it's all, privacy compliant, HIPAA compliant. And there's a data center that is established through the University of Pittsburgh. So another Pennsylvania connection for you, David. And looking at, that side. So looking at babies enrolled right in the NICU to this registry, and then families can enroll in the patient family front registry. So that will be ready to go for families to start collaborating in this next year, which we're really, really excited for. And then we can go for a bigger grant to implement it across all of CPRN sites. That's the goal. And again, this is, we're looking at things in many different ways. So we know that there's data gaps. We know that that's frustrating. We're working on long-term follow-up guidelines at the same time that we're working at this registry. And we were just at the Child Neurology Society conference, had a booth, had presents, and we worked with the leaders of the neonatal special interest group at CNS, Child Neurology Society, to start a conversation around long-term follow-up guidelines. And I'm so overwhelmingly thrilled to share that we had over 120 neurologists in that room, focusing on our community. And this is something that I think many of us for many years, and you might even new families who are diagnosed may feel that, HIE isn't a focus area. I'm here to tell you that we have made it a focus area, and we are being heard, and we are partnering with some of the most amazing people that really care deeply about our community to make sure that the care and outcomes improve. And that is something that I was blown away to be in that room and see that many people care so deeply. And that work started there. It's going to continue next at the Newborn Brain Society conference in February. I've put a call out for local families in the California group to join us for that. And so if you're in California, you're near La Jolla in February, we'd love to have you participate in our lunch workshop at that conference. You can find more information on the California group if you're in California. And then we're going to continue that conversation, and we're going to talk about that we're going to actually be hosting a family conference next October in Charlotte, North Carolina, on the heels of the Child Neurology Society meeting. And so, a lot of you have asked for a family conference for a long time, and that's one thing that we really have wanted to do. And that's going to help us, one, have in-person support, in-person connections. We anticipate full families attending. So we're going to have activities with our social worker and our child life specialist for the kids, for siblings, for our families, talking about the heart of who we are and who all of us are as families. And then also bringing in our medical advisory board and other collaborators to talk research and move forward advocacy. So really, really excited for that. So stay tuned on more information that's coming before the end of the month on dates and places and registration and all of that.
It's frustrating.
So I'm going to let you talk.
Well, I was just going to say, as frustrating as it is to hear that, these things don't exist and we have to forge ahead and create them. The interest and the concern has been there. Mm-hmm. I think as an organization, one of our greatest values is that we're a vocal convener, and in some cases we insert ourselves in discussions where we haven't had a presence in the past, and it may not be as welcome as we thought we would be, but that doesn't stop us, because the work we're doing is critically important. The registry and some of the other things that Betsy mentioned, these are things that are long-term projects that should have been started, honestly, decades ago, but for whatever reason they weren't, and now they are. And it is pretty remarkable to see the interest and the engagement that we get from providers who have been wondering aloud for many years, why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? We're asking the same questions, but together we've built up this momentum that has allowed us to say, we are doing this, and, and this is how, and this is why, and people are responding. So I think without Hope for HIE, these things would still be twisting in the wind. I think families would feel disconnected and isolated, just like they did. Now they have an opportunity to get connected. It's very interesting because I think one of the more profound experiences I have is when when I've had the opportunity to connect with providers and go to conferences, I see the genuine care and interest in improving outcomes, reducing incidence of HIE, and I mean, people genuinely want to be a part of this community. They want to make change, and fortunately, we can facilitate that. And together, we work towards a future that's a lot different from the one that my daughter was born into 10 years ago, and that's pretty awesome. And again, this is Giving Tuesday, so you can play a part in that too. You can play a part in change by making a contribution to Hope for HIE at the link above. We value your support. We care deeply for our families, and our work will continue. And we will continue to build these things and introduce new programs and support mechanisms and bring people to the table who aren't currently having important conversations. And it's again, it's as corny as it might sound, it's been, we're changing the world. We're changing the world for families that have been impacted. We're changing the world for families who are going to, join our community years from now. I think things will look even more dramatically different 10 years from now. Than I think the change is the growth curve is going to be even more dramatic the next 10 years, because we have done so much in the last 10 years. I honestly can't imagine what's ahead of us. I mean, we have goals and we have visions, but if it goes anything like it did the last 10 years, then we'll far exceed what we have in mind. And it's because of supporters like you and engaged people who are willing to invest and volunteer and support our work that we can do this. And again, it wouldn't happen if it weren't for our community. So, donate, speak up, advocate, become a hustle host. There's information on our website about that. You can join me at our local event on April 12th in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. There'll be information about that soon, but mark it on your calendar. You'll have you can come see me, meet my family. We can talk a little bit more about anything you're interested in or any experience you have. I think I've seen now, I think we've hosted 3 years now, and we've had a couple of families who have come back all 3 years. So, we generally, we have passing conversations throughout the year, but it's always nice to see kind of where they're at, check in with them, see the progress they've made, watch their children grow, and vice versa. So it's, and that's one of at 10 years, I mean, there's people like Betsy who I've been connected with from the beginning just by virtue of our volunteering together. I just had an opportunity to connect with a dad who I hadn't seen or talked with in a few years. Our journeys have been somewhat parallel in terms of timeline, and we've sort of left and entered each other's lives throughout different periods. But just to see how his life has changed and share how mine has changed and the insight we have after more than a decade of experience as dads is really interesting. And that's, to me, that's really what this work's about. It's about bringing families together, supporting one another. I can tell you right now, when my daughter was hospitalized with a seizure a few years after she was born, she hadn't had any from the time she left the NICU until that point. The first people I reached out to were my peers on the board. It was the middle of the night, and I sent messages, and sure enough, they were there for me. And that was a really special thing to have. And it's been great to be that parent now that people reach out to, and I still reach out. I reached out to a peer again in the middle of the night when my daughter had a medical emergency. She was on the other side of the country, but she picked up the phone and we chatted, and she gave me some great advice and helped me think through what our next step should be in that critical moment. And that's what Hope for HIE is. It's support, it's care, it's camaraderie, it's grieving together, it's celebrating success together, and it's just pushing forward always. And that's just a really, really inspiring thing to be a part of.
Yeah. You couldn't say any better. Like, this community personally, has been there for me in my darkest days. And I think that's one of the unique things about our community, is how we come together and support one another. And, I think, the support groups are always great when you're, especially early on, everyone needs to, you feel so isolated in this community, not in the community, but out in the community. And it's easy to feel isolated in the NICU with a baby with HIE. Typically, our babies are the biggest ones in the NICU and often very sick. And you're looking around in a sea of preemies that are, feeding and growing. And you're like, how did this happen? How did I get here? And I remember, that feeling never truly leaves you. But I love to see now, in my own journey 12 years ago, sitting in that NICU, wondering and knowing like we can't be the only ones that have gone through this. This is crazy, you know. And the staff, they were great with clinical care, but they had nothing to offer with support, nothing to offer with education. I'd overheard the term encephalopathy during rounds one day. And this was after Max had like gone into the step down unit. And the neonatologist that was on, I was like, hey, can I stop you and ask you a couple questions? And he seemed very annoyed that I did that. And I said, hey, you know, you use the term encephalopathy. Can you please explain what that means to me? That's a really big word that I haven't heard before. And this is like 2 weeks into the NICU. And he said, well, it just means that, you know, it has something to do with the brain, but don't go home and Google. And I was like, well, that's an interesting thing to say. And I felt so like dismissed, and I felt like I was annoying him. So and like you're in survival mode in the NICU. And so I was like, encephalopathy, noted. Okay. My sister-in-law is a pediatric physical therapist, and I text her and I was like, hey, Sarah, like, I have no idea. This word was just given to me, like, or I just heard this word. What does this mean? And she's like, she explained it a little bit more. But the first thing I went home and did was Google, of course. Right. And like at the time, the landscape of Google is just so overwhelming. It's still overwhelming, but I think we've made it a little softer place for people to land. And our, NICU outreach is absolutely phenomenal now. We have connected with literally, I think, almost 1,000 NICUs around the world. Through our outreach, we are sending support packages to about 600 of those. Families get a bag of goodies. They get educational materials in first languages. We know that it's really important with our global community to make sure that our resources are accessible, that they're in first language, that they know that they're not alone. They get something that has, bright colors. They have a hat and a swaddle for a baby. They have, a cup so they can hydrate and caffeinate as they need to do so. And they have the connection to know that they're not alone. And David mentioned Highlights of Hope book. And so I wanted to just share that this was a project. Project that our fantastic intern a few years ago, Simran Bansal, I have to always give her a shout out. And she is now in med school, you guys, at Harvard. So she's a smarty pants, no shock. And if many of you had the chance to meet with Simran and maybe have your story included in this book, this is available in print that you can buy on Amazon around the world. I've sent it to researchers in Australia. I've sent it to researchers in the UK, across Europe and Asia, because, love it or not, Amazon does have worldwide accessibility. So it's really a wonderful tool that you can get this around the world. It is just beautiful. The pictures, the stories, it was very intentional. We have such a wide range of outcomes in our community, as we know, and we wanted everyone to find someone in this book that they related to, someone that they felt their story resonates with someone else's story. And so Simran was very intentional to make sure that when we selected stories, that we had that diversity of story, diversity of families, diversity of family structures. And all of these stories are available on our website. You can just read them for free too. But if you want this tangible book, and what I think is really fun is we didn't really know, I don't know how any of this would go building this organization. And I think it was last year, there was a glitch on Facebook, as there are, and it had reset all the groups to chronological order. So I was just scrolling through some of the early posts when the Facebook group started in 2010. And I came across a post from Sarah Berg, who has been in the community forever. And, I met her early on, and she was so helpful for me personally and for so many in the community. And Sarah said, man, we got to write a book about this. Everyone, we got to have this. And so it was really amazing, because I don't know if I would have ever stumbled upon that post without this glitch. And then I got to comment on the post, and I said, look, we have it. We did it.
Check.
Right? Check. So, these ideas and these things, like, call it manifesting, call it what you want. I call them hope winks. Things happen along the way for our community. with a little bit of luck, a lot of hope, and a lot of hard work. And again, we can't do it without you. And so thank you for all of your support. Support doesn't have to be financial. We know everyone is in a different financial position to give, but giving can be through volunteering. I included the volunteer link to our volunteer hub. Giving back can be sharing these posts and encouraging others to give as well, and activating your networks of support. And that's how we build advocacy. That's how we build awareness. That's how we build education, support, and research. We're going to continue doing so. We obviously, our leadership has a significant commitment to continuing to build out the quality and the breadth of programs and services we offer. Families can tap in at any time. You can type in HIE.support in any browser, and it'll get you to our support overview, ways to connect with our social worker, with our child life specialist, with our programs, with peers. And we have, just amazing support programs now. We have our support, our weekly video support groups. That list of this month's has posted. We have our extended family support group, newly diagnosed families meeting this Thursday, hip surgery, peer perspective series next Monday, and then our lost family support on Thursday, December 12th. So all of those can be found also on our website at hopeforhie.org/events. And we just want to thank you all for tuning in today on Giving Tuesday, and for, hopefully, continuing to support and recognize all that we're able to together and have done together. It's been a ride these past 10 years, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this next 10 years takes us. And David, thank you for your unending leadership and friendship and camaraderie through all of this for
Likewise.
so many of us, in the trenches, arm in arm, as we move from like ragtag parent, presenting our community at international conferences, and really digging in and advancing research. I didn't share this, but I will, and I'll do a separate video on it too. But many of you know that the FDA has tapped us to speak and contribute to the neonatal side of things with regulatory, and also the EMA in Europe. And there's a new guideline that the FDA just shared in October. And we were the work that we've done together was encapsulated in that. So that was a pretty cool win to see that we are like arm in arm with the FDA in helping to advance science for our community, which we know is needed. We have a spot with NIH where we are on a community engagement board, which is just wild. I mean, these really huge entities that it's like the big leagues. So we're, to see where we've gone is amazing, and to see where we go. I am so grateful for everyone's support for this little organization that could and is and isn't quite so little anymore. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for all your work, Betsy. It's you're the driving force behind so much of what we do. It's like, see a need, let's meet a need, and that's and we do things on both a small scale and a large scale. We're involved in research. We're working with the FDA. We're also doing peer support on a one-on-one basis. So it's we do everything we can to listen and respond and work with whoever's willing to give us the time and effort and attention. So, and parents out there and providers, keep talking. I just had my daughter's pediatric neurologist just said to me at our last appointment, "Hey, I'd really like to hear more about Hope for HIE," which was wonderful.
Yep.
Music to my ears. That's what you hope for. And, you can be the one to initiate that conversation. Say, have you heard about this organization? Because, they're just doing dynamite work, and I think you should know more. So if you can't donate, just say our name and offer the link to anybody who you think could benefit from it. So thank you very much, and happy Giving Tuesday. Happy holidays to everybody. And thank you for your continued support. You're a driving force behind the change that's being created, throughout the systems in the world.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your Giving Tuesday, and we'll be talking to you soon. And happy holidays, everyone. Take care.